Hello and welcome to another episode of Codo Cinema, the podcast show where I talk about movies. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. For this episode, I'm going back to the topic of sports, and this movie that I'm going to talk about is going to be from the world of Cars, which is from Disney and Pixar, and the Cars movie that I'm going to talk about is the third Cars movie titled Cars 3. Cars 3 is a 2017 American animated sports comedy adventure film produced by Pixar Animation Studios for Walt Disney Pictures. Cars 3 is the sequel to Cars 2, which came out in 2011 and the third film in the Cars franchise. The film was directed by Brian Fee and produced by Kevin Reher, from a screenplay written by Keel Murray, Bob Peterson, and Mike Rich, and a story developed by Fee, Ben Queen, and the writing team of E.L. Podell and Jonathan E. Stewart, with a voice cast that features Owen Wilson, Larry the Cable Guy, Bonnie Hunt, Tony Shalhoub, Guido Crowley, Cheech Marin, Jennifer Lewis, Paul Dooley, Lloyd Sher, Michael Wallace, Katherine Hellman, and John Ratzenberger, with other cast members including Cristela Alonso, Chris Cooper, Armie Hammer, Nathan Fillion, Kerry Washington, and Leah Delaria, in addition to a dozen NASCAR personalities. In this film, Lightning McQueen, now a veteran race car, must prove that he is still competitive against a new generation of advanced racers who are more technological, with the help of young technician Cruz Ramirez, to prevent a forced retirement from the Piston Cup. Now, I think that is a good plot right there, folks. Now, just to move forward with this movie, the film had a budget of $175 million and it grossed over $383.9 million, and it was released on May 23rd of 2017 in Cannapolis and June 16th, 2017 in the United States. Development of Cars 3 began in late 2011 after the release of Cars 2, and entered production in 2014, with Pixar's then CCO John Lasseter stating that it would be a very emotional story and it would go back to the first film's themes. The production team for the film conducted research on multiple NASCAR racers, particularly older ones, as well as a sports psychoanalyst, while also focusing on McQueen's relationship with Doc Hudson and its meaning. The production utilized a new rendering system, RIX Integration Subsystem (RIS), which was previously used in Finding Dory. New cast members, including Hammer and Alonso, were announced in January 2017, followed by Fillion, Washington, and Delaria 2 months later. Randy Newman, who had worked on the first film, composed the film's score with artists such as Andrade, James Bay, Brad Paisley, and Jorge Blanco, contributing tracks for the film. Cars 3 was first screened for the NASCAR industry in Cannapolis, North Carolina on May 23rd of 2017, before its theatrical release in the US on June 16th, accompanied by the animated short Lou. And as I mentioned, the film had a $175 million budget and it grossed $383.9 million. However, the overall box office became the lowest grossing film of the franchise, but still a box office success. Now, of course, we will be breaking down this movie, but before we do that, I want to give you my brief history with the Cars franchise. Now, with the Cars franchise, I have seen the first, second, and third film. Yes, I have watched I have watched all three Cars movies, including the Mater's Tall Tales as well, because after the success of the first two Cars movie, um, Disney and Pixar did a little somewhat of a, I want to say, a spin-off that focuses on Mater the tow truck. Mater, who is being voiced by Larry the Cable Guy. I mean, let's be honest. Mater is a funny character. He is basically Lightning McQueen's best friend, and he got his very own, he's got his very own, spin-off, where he tells he tells stories to Lightning McQueen of what he was beforehand, before he ever met Lightning McQueen. Like at one point he was a daredevil, he was a fire truck, he was a monster truck wrestler, he was also a private eye detective, among many other things. But of course, it's Mater. He's always gonna tell some crazy stories to Lightning McQueen, if you know what I'm saying, right? And then, of course, there has been a number of video games from the Cars franchise, which I think is really cool. But that's all I really know about Cars. But I have seen all three movies, and I enjoyed all three of them. Like the first one's always going to be a classic, and then you have the second one, which I thought the second one was fun, but even then, Cars 2, according to a lot of people, is arguably the worst of the franchise, and it's not hard to see why, because Cars 2 focused more on Mater rather than Lightning McQueen and his World Cup tour. Plus, you have this. Plus, that film had a spy plot as well, and look, I don't mind that movie existing, but I feel like the movie focused more on Mater rather than Lightning McQueen, which I don't mind. I got a feeling that movie should have had a subtitle like Cars 2, Mater the Spy, or Cars 2, Agent Mater, or Cars 2, The Spy Who Towed Me. Get it? Because Mater's a tow truck. No, just throwing out ideas. But nevertheless, I still enjoy Cars 2, even though, yes, I do agree it is the worst of the bunch. And then you have Cars 3 on the other hand, which, in my opinion, is the best sequel out of all three Cars movies. And like I said, the first one's going to be a classic, but Cars 3, that one's the best Cars sequel. And it literally, and without a doubt, beats out Cars 2. Overall, I enjoyed the Cars movies. I mean, let's be honest, Mater and Lightning McQueen, their chemistry in those movies, they're a lot of fun. I mean, I like all the other characters too, including Doc Hudson as well. Like Doc Hudson is basically McQueen's mentor, and his presence in Cars 3 is felt throughout this movie, in my opinion. And this will definitely segue into the overall breakdown of this movie. So, before I do that, if to anyone who is new to the podcast of Codo Cinema, welcome to the podcast. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for more content. And if you are listening to this through Spotify and Podbean, don't forget to hit the follow button on that as well. So it's time to go racing to Cars 3. So anyway, the movie opens up 5 years after the second movie, which is basically, Cars 2 competing in the World Grand Prix. Lightning McQueen is now a 7-time Piston Cup champion, and Lightning McQueen is still hungry to win the Piston Cup and is supported by his pal Mater and memories of Doc Hudson who inspire him to win, alongside with the whole Radiator Springs crew who comes to the race to support Lightning. And Lightning wears the number 95, and Lightning sticks to his old routine of training at Doc Hudson's dirt track. And the movie even opens up with Lightning McQueen thinking about Doc Hudson and his training, right? So anyway, Lightning McQueen is being voiced by Owen Wilson. Then Larry the Cable Guy plays Mater, and then Doc Hudson. Doc Hudson is voiced by the late great Paul Newman. And to anybody who doesn't know, Paul Newman is actually a race car driver as well. Like, yes, he's an actor, but he's also a race car driver as well. And I think that's amazing. And yes, Paul Newman played Doc Hudson in Cars 1, where he was basically a doctor and a lawyer, but he was also a former race car driver as well, where we learn later on in the movie that Doc Hudson was an actual race car driver. But also, Paul Newman passed away in 2008, and he wasn't in the second Cars movie. But what this movie did is that they actually used archived and unused audio recordings from the first movie. So basically, what they did was they took unused audio from the first movie, plus and I believe they also used some outtakes and bloopers as well to create dialogue for Doc Hudson, and of course and of course I think some animate and I believe they used new animation as well with the unused dialogue as well. And in my opinion, I think Disney and Pixar, and I think John Lasseter, I think they honored Paul Newman the best they could. I mean, let's be honest. Paul Newman literally nailed the role of Doc Hudson. Like Doc Hudson is basically, well, he's basically like an old race car driver, but at the end, he comes to realize how important Lightning McQueen was, not only to the town, but also to him as well. After Lightning McQueen, after he sent Lightning McQueen off. But I'm glad that they were able to, bring Doc Hudson back in this movie, but also using unused footage, unused audio recordings from the first movie. So I'm kind of glad they did that. But anyway, let's move forward. The Radiator Springs crew, Luigi, Mac, Ramon, Lizzie, Mater, of course, Sally. Like, there's so many characters in this movie. So, like, the characters you have. So, the characters Mater, Luigi, Guido, Sally, and then, of course, you got Lizzie as well, Mac, Fillmore, Sarge, Ramon, Flo, Sheriff, Red, among many other characters from the world of Cars. I mean, that's a lot of characters. Luigi is being voiced by Tony Shalhoub. Guido is being voiced by Guido Quaroni. Mac being voiced by John Ratzenberger. And then, of course, you got Ramon being played by Cheech Marin. Lizzie, who's being voiced by Catherine Hellman. Sarge, who's being voiced by Paul Dooley. Flo being voiced by Jennifer Lewis. Then you got Sheriff being voiced by Michael Wallace. And then, of course, you got Fillmore being voiced by Lloyd Sher, who was originally voiced by none other than George Carlin in the first movie. And then you got Red being voiced by Jerome Rampt. And they're all basically here to support Lightning McQueen. And as the Piston Cup season progresses, Lightning McQueen finds himself overshadowed by another race car driver named Jackson Storm, who is being voiced by Armie Hammer, who is an arrogant rookie who belongs to a new generation of racers that use the latest technology to improve their speed and performance. Jackson's car is optimized for tire pressure, downforce aerial dynamics, and even weight distribution, and he holds the optimal racing line on every single lap, which he achieves by training on cutting-edge race simulators. Jackson has a 2% lower drag, 5% higher downforce, and 1.2% higher top speed. Lightning's fellow veterans, including Bobby Swift, being voiced by Angel Oquendo, Cal Weathers, being voiced by Kyle Petty, and Brick Yardley, being voiced by Diedrich Bader, either retired or are fired by their sponsors to be replaced by new generation racers on the racetrack. And in the final race of the season at Los Angeles, Lightning briefly gains first place but starts falling behind after being overtaken by Storm and the other next generation racers. He desperately tries to keep up, but in doing so, loses control and suffers a rollover crash after hitting the outside wall, leaving him unable to race and ending his worst season on record prematurely. Now, I'm going to pause for a couple minutes right here because the crash sequence from Lightning McQueen, in my opinion, is basically the darkest scene to come out of this movie. And the reason why, because you have Lightning McQueen who's trying desperately to catch up to Jackson Storm, to which, may I remind you, he is a next generation racer who has a lot more technological advances compared to what Lightning McQueen is. Lightning McQueen's basically, like you have Lightning McQueen who's like an old school like race car driver, right? And you have these next generation race car drivers who basically have more technological advances and aerial dynamics compared to Lightning McQueen. And it's very upsetting too because Lightning McQueen speeds up, but the back of his tires begin to shake and swerve for a bit, up until the point where he lost control, hits a wall, and flies like who knows how many meters in a rollover crash. Like, dude, that scene alone is very violent. In my opinion, I think that's the most violent scene to come out of this movie. And this is rated G, by the way. Like, this movie, all the Cars movies are rated G. And I think Cars 2 and 3 would have gotten PG ratings because, coming to think of it, Cars 2, which has that spy plot, there's a lot of violence there's a lot of action and violence in that movie. And a lot of people even criticize that movie for being too violent for a G-rated movie. And to be quite honest, I I I don't disagree with that. Cars 3 has more of an emotional story compared to the previous movies, and with that crash that happened, it would have been it would have hit a PG rating right there. In fact, this was the film's teaser trailer, by the way. There was a teaser trailer of Lightning McQueen's car crash, and I think it was a lot darker than it was. But Disney and Pixar had the guts to show Lightning McQueen's car crash, and boy, did that movie delivered on that. So anyway, let's move forward. 4 months later, while recovering in Radiator Springs, a primer-coated Lightning McQueen watches footage of the crash that ended the career of his late mentor, Doc Hudson, as I mentioned, who's being voiced by Paul Newman. And of course, he remembers what Doc said about the race that he did where he crashed. He said, when I finally got put back together, you know what they say? Your history. Move right over to the next rookie standing by. There was a lot left in me. I never got the chance. Like, that's what Doc said, because Doc Hudson had a lot inside him to continue racing. Like, his team believes that Doc Hudson's history, like, he's literally done, right? He's history. Let's bring in the next rookie, if you know what I'm saying, right? I think that's what he was trying to say. Even though, yes, he had a lot left in him. The crash really, did a lot of damage. But of course, Lightning's girlfriend Sally, being voiced by Bonnie Hunt, he tells Sally that he does not want to be forced into retirement as Doc was, and decides to start training again, looking for new ways to regain his edge. So then, Rusty and Dusty, being voiced by Tom Magliozzi and Ray Magliozzi, the owners of Lightning's Rusty's racing team, send him to a newly opened racing center, much to his surprise. And when he arrives, he learns that they have sold Rusty's to new owner Sterling to a new owner named Sterling, who's being voiced by Nathan Fillion, who assigns him to work with trainer Cruz Ramirez, being played by Cristela Alonso. Cruz is considered to be a master at motivating racers of going beyond their normal abilities. The racing center has the all new and cutting edge equipment needed to match the performance of the new generation of cars, including treadmills, wind tunnel, and a racetrack simulator. Cruz starts lightning slowly as she loosens his joints and hangs up upside down to ensure that the oil reaches all the parts inside. She makes him name all four of his tires. And of course, Cruz is a racing technician who always longed to be a racer, but never had the opportunity due to her nerves and Sterling disapproving of her potential. Lightning eventually becomes impatient and annoyed with Cruz's methods and attempts to use the high-tech racing simulator, only to cause severe damage to the equipment. Convinced that Lightning is no longer capable of winning, as his speed and performance have dropped off considerably, Sterling is ready to take him off the racing circuit and use him for the product endorsements. Lightning offers a deal instead. If he wins the last race of the season in Florida, he can keep racing at his discretion, or else otherwise he will retire immediately, and of course, and I think he mentioned this, sell mud flaps. So Sterling accepts the deal and sends Cruz to work with him one-on-one at a nearby beach. And of course, she brings the equipment with her, and of course, Lightning McQueen tells Cruz, "Life is a beach, and you drive." Get it? Because he's on the beach. Both Cruz and McQueen are on the beach, and Guido and Luigi are with him, including Mac. And Guido and Luigi actually laughed at that, and And when I heard that, I'm just like, gee, I wonder I wonder what he's referring to. And also, as I mentioned, this movie is rated G, right? I guess life isn't a highway on the beach, right? This is basically, like I said, Lightning McQueen said, life is a beach and you drive. Get it? Because they're on the beach, right? Right by water, huh? Nice little in joke right there, Lightning McQueen. So anyway, both Cruz and McQueen are trying to, like, I guess you could say in terms, well, as a runner, I used to run cross country and we do what is called sprints, right? We like sprint there and back to a certain point. I guess that's what Lightning McQueen is trying to do. But instead of improving his own top speed to beat storms, Lightning spends most of the day helping Cruz get used to racing on sandy coastline outside the training center. Cruz's unconventional training methods and lack of real world racing experience frustrate Lightning as they attempt to record his top speed at Fireball Beach. Lightning tops out at 198 miles per hour, still slower than Storm. Meanwhile, Jackson Storm was clocking in at 213 miles per hour on the racetracks. The data predicts Lightning chances of winning as 1.2% and Jackson at 95%. And of course, this is being brought up by Chick Hicks, mind ya. Yes, Chick Hicks does a race car broadcasting show where he talks about like certain race car picks, like the sports picks, right? Like there's sports picks and you have a certain host picking the top 10 best moments or top 10 highlights, right? And of course, he he mentions the Jackson Storm's prediction for the chances of who's gonna win, right? Like Jackson Storm or Lightning McQueen. Turns out Jackson Storm has a higher chance than Lightning McQueen. And Chick Hicks, who's being voiced by Bob Peterson, literally just like, all right, it looks like Lightning McQueen's career might be over after that. Something like that. Something like that. Although I can't imagine Michael Keaton saying something like that too, because Michael Keaton also voiced Chick Hicks in the first Cars movie. Just to let you know. But anyway, Lightning McQueen decides to train at the Thunder Hollow Speedway, which is a dirt track on which Doc raced during his prime time, but they realize it is being used for a demolition derby called the Crazy Eight and are forced to participate. Lightning camouflaged himself with mud, and of course, Lightning and Cruz fight a bully school bus named Miss Fritter, being voiced by Leah Delaria. And Miss Fritter just literally, she basically goes crazy. Like this is a crazy bus we're dealing with, and not the D.W. Reed kind of crazy bus. This is an actual crazy bus with literal bull horns, right? And of course, she has a collection of license plates. And I believe she tells both Cruz and McQueen about license plates. And she's like, oh yeah, your license plates will make a fine addition to my collection. And you know what? That line alone is spot on for her character. And of course, this is also an in joke. And of course, this is also an Easter egg to General Grievous from Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, where he meets up with Anakin and Obi-Wan and tells the two Jedi Knights, your lightsabers will make a fine addition to my collection. That's what Miss Fritter said to both McQueen and Cruz, that your license plates will make a fine addition to my collection. And I don't know how many cars that she has rammed, that she has. I don't know how many cars that she has crashed into, but I gotta admit, she has a body count full. And I gotta admit, she's probably got a body count, and she keeps the license plates as trophies. Much like how General Grievous keeps the lightsabers from fallen Jedi victims. Let's be honest, both Cruz and McQueen able to get the upper hand. However, um, Lightning manages to defeat Miss Fritter. However, Cruz wins and accidentally reveals um, Lightning to the public when a water tanker topples near topples, thereby washing the mud off of Lightning. And of course, Lightning is humiliated on national TV. And of course, they're both inside Mac's truck, and of course, Cruz has the trophy, and Lightning McQueen rages at her for wasting his time and accidentally breaking her trophy, and she gets upset and reveals that she had wanted to be a race car driver professionally when she was younger, but never started a race because she felt outclassed by other cars. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you, um, Lightning McQueen just road raging his frustration. I don't blame him at all. And look, some people will probably say this was uncalled for, but let's be honest, that rant was warranted because let's be honest, Lightning McQueen has survived two near death experiences. One at Los Angeles when he got rolled over, and then of course at this dirt, and of course at the Thunder Hollow Speedway Derby, right? And he almost won, right? And he almost won. Like, he almost got crushed by the bus, right? Miss Fritter, who was going to take Lightning McQueen's license plate for her collection, and he's trying to get back into the routine, he's trying to get back into training into being a good racer, right? And Cruz just literally shows off, right? And when Lightning McQueen just rages, like when Lightning McQueen loses his temper, I felt really bad for him at that point. Like, look, like I can't like when Lightning McQueen loses his temper, I'm just like, can you blame him though? Like, he's trying to get back into the swing of things, trying to get proper training, but no, apparently he has to, spend time with his trainer training her, right? And this is where this is where he learns that Cruz was originally going to be a race car driver, but unfortunately, she didn't even start a race because she felt outclassed by other cars. And while that may seem upsetting, at the same time, I'm just like, really? Like, she never tried to do it. Like, she felt outclassed, right? Like, has she, like, outclassed? Like, okay, look, some people can be outclassed by anything, but the fact that she never tries to do it makes it all the more hard to understand, right? Like, I can understand where Lightning McQueen is coming from with his rant, but for Cruz, like, yeah, she wants to be a racer. I mean, I get it, she wants to be a racer, but the fact that she never did it makes it feel inconsistent, in my opinion, because it's never stated that what if she was ever afraid or not. Like, if she was afraid, or or if she was afraid to race, okay, I probably would have understand. But the fact that she says that she felt outclassed by the other race car drivers without even trying, like, in my opinion, that part should have been written better, in my opinion. But of course, Cruz leaves to make the trip back to the racing center on her own. So anyway, after seeing a report on Storm's new speed record, Lightning calls Mater for advice. Mater suggests that he track down Doc's mentor, Smokey. So then, what he does next is Lightning picks up Cruz, and of course, Lightning apologizes to Cruz, and he remembers some of the old training methods that Cruz taught him, like Cruz taught McQueen. Like, McQueen loosen the tires a bit, just loosen up, and of course he says, I'm sorry," while there's like some music in the back going on, while some upbeat music is going on in the background. And I'll be honest, it was a bit funny, but even Cruz was like, okay, 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 just stop. So then the two travel to Doc's hometown of Thomasville, where they meet Smokey and several of Doc's old friends, and Smokey's being voiced by Chris Cooper. And accepting the fact that he is not the racer he once was, he allows them to coach him in methods to outsmart Storm, instead of trying to beat him with sheer speed. Smokey reveals that even though Doc never raced again after his crash, he found a new happiness in training Lightning McQueen. And of course, it's also revealed that Doc reached out to Smokey after the whole Piston Cup race. And I got a feeling both Doc and Smokey left on very bad terms after Doc's crash in, I think it was 54, right? 1954. I think that's when the crash happened, according to the first movie. I think that's the year that it happened, 1954. That's when Doc crashed. Because it sounded like Doc and Smokey left on very bad terms. But of course, after the Piston Cup race, Doc reached out to Smokey, told him, "Hey, I don't know if you heard, but I'm actually training Lightning McQueen," something like that. And of course, he's been sending pictures and newspapers to Smokey just to create a little memorabilia, or actually keeping memories of Doc and Lightning McQueen, right? So after Lightning accepts that he is an older car and will never be as fast as Storm, Smokey and Doc's old friends, Louise Barnstormer Nash, being played by Margot Martindale, a white 1950 Nash ambassador and a retired Piston Cup racer from the 1950s, Rivers Scott, Isaiah Whitlock Jr., a gray and black 1938 dirt track racer and retired Piston Cup racer, and Junior Midnight Moon, being voiced by Junior Johnson. Then of course, with and then of course, and who's based, and of course Midnight Moon. Of course, Junior Midnight Moon is a black 1940 Ford Standard coupe, and a retired Piston Cup racer help him learn new tricks to overcome his speed disadvantage using Cruz as his sparring partner. After many attempts, Lightning finally manages to pass Cruz during the final practice race at Thomasville Speedway. However, Cruz suddenly overtakes Lightning, which causes him to remember being passed by Storm before his crash, shaking his confidence. So after the whole training, the Lightning goes to Florida and is surprised to find Smokey and Doc's old friends cheering him on despite him falling behind to the next generation racers. So anyway, several laps into the race, Sterling spots Cruz among them and orders her to return to the racing center. Overhearing the exchange on his radio and remembering Cruz's dream of racing, Lightning avoids a massive multi-car pileup and has his crew outfit Cruz to take his place in the race, giving her a second chance to become a race car. At first, Sterling tries to talk her out of it, but Smoke is like like I think there's a rule I think there's a rule there's a rule that only the race car number can compete, right? Not just the driver. I think that's the rule, right? Only the race car number can compete, not just the driver. I think that's the rule. To anybody who's listening and knows enough about NASCAR, the whole race car number competing instead of the drivers, right? If that's actually a thing, put that in the comment section below. And I think that's all. And I think that also happened in another race car movie. For example, in the Talladega Nights movie, the Ballad of Ricky Bobby. In the beginning of the movie, one of the race car drivers took a break, and of course Ricky Bobby, who is also helping out at the race, he actually steps in for that guy to race, right? I mean, it was still, they didn't change the number, but they changed the race car driver, if you know what I'm saying, right? I think the number still qualifies. I think that's the thing. Now, just to let everybody know, I am not a NASCAR expert on this, so to anybody who knows like the rules of NASCAR, please let me know in the comment section below. But other than that, let's continue. Um, Mater pulls Sterling away and just basically does his whole tow truck thing, saying, "Hey, I heard about mud flaps, right? I mean, I know a lot about that stuff, right?" Mater doing his thing, trying to like distract Sterling, right? So using both Smokey's advice and her own, Lightning coaches her through the pack until she is in second place behind Storm. On the last lap, Storm rams Cruz into the wall, but she flips away using one of Doc's old techniques and lands ahead of him to win the race, much to the amazement of McQueen. That's actually true because Smokey told Lightning McQueen that Doc did this trick, right, where one of the rookies pinned Doc to the wall, but Doc actually flips over the wall and over the driver and lands ahead to win the race. That's what Cruz did, right? And of course, she and Lightning are both credited with the victory. And of course, she quits her job with Sterling to accept an offer to race for Dynaco. So anyway, as Cruz celebrates her victory, Sterling offers her a role on his team, but she instead takes a counter offer from Dynaco's owner, Tex Dynaco. Since Lightning and Cruz were both wearing number 95, Lightning becomes the joint winner of the race and effectively passing his deal with Sterling. Returning to Radiator Springs, Lightning reveals that Tex has bought Rusty's from Sterling, now decked in Doc's old racing colors. Lightning decides to continue racing but trains Cruz first for the rest of the season. Mater was working in his lot, and there's also an end credit scene where Mater was working in his lot, and when his cell phone rings, he inadvertently knocks over his reception antenna, and the phone goes dead, much to his dismay. Damn gum. And that's it. That's the whole movie right there. So there's my breakdown in this movie. Now, my overall thoughts on this movie, I actually enjoyed this movie. Now this movie more is a lot deep than the first two movies because this movie is basically, Lightning McQueen, who's basically, an old generation race car driver going up against new generation race car drivers, right? And this is like paving the way for the next generation, right? And to be fair, I'm also all for I'm all and to be fair, I am all for next generation competitors, but also sometimes you still gotta at least honor the old generation as well because let's be honest, the whole technological advances is a new thing, and Lightning McQueen is used to the old school stuff, right? But also at the same time, it is interesting to see both generations come together in this movie. In fact, at the end where Cruz wins her race, the new generation race car drivers gave her respect, right? They literally gave her the respect. And I think that's amazing right there. Plus this movie has a good message too. Like there's good themes and messages in this movie to be quite honest. The primary message for Cars 3 is about the importance of mentorship, passing on a legacy, and knowing when to let go of your own ambitions to empower the next generation. And to be fair, that's a very good message. Like there is mentorship between both Lightning McQueen and Cruz, and then of course the legacy because obviously Lightning McQueen remembers Doc's past as a race car driver. So like Doc's legacy, and then of course knowing when to let go of your own ambitions to empower the next generation. And that's a really good message right there. Very, very good message right there. Plus, even after the crash that Lightning McQueen happened, it does leave you wondering where do you go from there, right? And I know Lightning McQueen moves on to continue training to get better, but also even then I know there's some athletes who end their careers abruptly due to like injury or of some sorts, right? And it does leave you wondering, where does life go after the competition is over, right? What do you do from there? And this is also good too because even though your career is done, where do you go for there? You just find a fresh start, right? Because the film encourages viewers to start fresh with new determination, even after a major loss or accident, finding strength in their past experiences to move forward. And that's actually really good. And that's a good message right there. And it encourages Lightning McQueen to move forward. Plus, even though he doesn't realize that he's training Cruz, he later comes to realize that at the end of the movie. And that's also a good passing of the torch as well, because now it's McQueen's legacy that is continuing, right? Like she's continuing McQueen's legacy while McQueen is continuing Doc Hudson's legacy as well. And that's a good takeaway right there. Like the legacy is continued and passed on from new members, right? And I like that. And I really like that message right there in this movie. Now, of course, it does leave you wondering on what happened to Jackson Storm. Yes, Jackson Storm lost the race at the end of the movie. We don't even know what happened to him at the end. Yes, we know he lost, but whatever happened to him? The film doesn't explicitly show what happened to Jackson Storm, but there are rumors and theories that he's still racing, right? That his racing career is still going, possibly trying to regain the Piston Cup after his loss to Cruz Ramirez. So basically, Cruz humiliated Jackson Storm. It sounds like Jackson Storm is still training, right? He's gonna train a lot better. Kind of like how Lightning McQueen did in this movie, both McQueen and Ramirez, right? And also the voice cast did a real good job in this movie. Like Owen Wilson did a fantastic job voicing Lightning McQueen, including Cristela Alonso. So, like she did a fantastic job voicing Cruz Ramirez. Even Armie Hammer, who voiced Jackson Storm, did a good job as well. Like, to be fair, Jackson Storm wasn't in the movie as much, to be quite honest, but even his presence is still felt, right? Especially Doc Hudson. Doc Hudson's presence is felt throughout this movie too. Like Lightning McQueen remembers Doc Hudson, and his presence is felt throughout this movie, especially from his old race car friends as well. There's even a few scenes where Doc and Lightning are training, right? Even to the point where Lightning accidentally lands into a cactus pit. And of course, Doc was also teaching him a new trick as well. And of course, Doc Hudson was also having fun doing this little tire trick on the front hood of his car, right? I thought that was pretty nice. Thinking back to Doc Hudson, remembering him. By the way, rest in peace to Paul Newman. Like Paul Newman did a fantastic job voicing Doc Hudson in this movie. Like in the first movie, but also the third movie as well, with through the use of unused audio recordings and of course outtakes as well, and whatever audio recordings they had. But also the animation is pretty good too. I really enjoy the animation in this movie. Plus, the story in this movie is really good. I actually like the story a lot more. The story is better in this movie compared to Cars 2. Plus, the critics gave this movie a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes. And actually, one critic named Mike Ryan of Uprocks called the film, and I quote, the Rocky 3 of the Cars franchise, and wrote, and I quote, there is a hint of sadness that seems to be present throughout Cars 3 that gives it a little more weight than the previous installments. And to be fair, I actually agree with that. I actually agree with that review, because coming to think of it, this is after Lightning's crash, and there's a lot more weight to it as he's trying to get back into the swing of things, or the drive of things, if you know what I'm saying, to beat Jackson Storm. And of course, there's a lot of emotion going on, particularly for McQueen during his training process. And that crash was really serious too. Like, in my opinion, that was the most violent scene in that movie. And of course, I think the second most violent is basically that thunder race derby with that crazy bus. Calling Cars 3 the Rocky 3 of the Cars franchise, that is actually the best description. This movie feels like Rocky, a Rocky movie, right? And I believe there's a couple of references to Rocky as well. Because, for example, Cruz and McQueen are practicing on the beach, right? Trying to drive, right? That's also a reference to when Rocky and an Apollo Creed are basically, running sprints on the beach as well. In fact, one of the race car drivers in this movie, his name is Cal Weathers. Cal Weathers is a professional race car and supporting character in Disney Pixar's Cars 3. He's actually the nephew of the legendary Strip the King Weathers and races for the Dinoco team, and one of Lightning McQueen's friendly rivals, and a veteran race car driver as well. And of course, he's actually voiced by Kyle Petty. And also, Kyle Petty is the son of of NASCAR legend Richard Petty, and Richard Petty also voiced the King in both Cars 1 and 3. Also to mention too, Cal Weathers, I think that's also a reference to actor Carl Weathers as well, because Carl Weathers played Apollo Creed in the first 4 Rocky movies, and of course, coincidentally enough, Carl Weathers played both Combat Carl and his son Combat Carl Jr. from the Toy Story franchise in the Toy Story short, Toy Story of Terror. I believe that's the name of the special. And despite being Dinoco sponsored, Cal Weathers was never their best racers, unlike his uncle, though he is shown winning one race in the movie, beating McQueen by a second. That's actually a pretty nice reference right there. So anyway, overall, I really enjoyed this movie, to be quite honest. Now, if I'm going to have to be honest with you all, though this movie is completely underrated, right? Like, this movie is pretty deep, but it's also underrated. Like, this movie deserves a lot more attention than it deserves, right? I feel like sports fans and of course race car fans as well should take note of this movie too, right? you know, at the very least, I mean, I know a lot of people are not fans of the Cars franchise, but to be quite honest, the whole franchise, including this movie, is underrated, and I believe it definitely deserves a watch. Plus, Cars 3 has a really good message of legacy and mentorship as well, especially in the world of race car driving. And with that being said, I think that's about it. And of course, if I were to give a rating on this movie, I'm actually going to give it an 8 out of 10. For what this movie had, I enjoyed. I really enjoyed Cars 3, and I believe Cars 3 is the best Cars sequel to come out of this franchise since the first movie, in my personal opinion. So anyway, with that being said, that's about it. So anyway, there you have it, folks. That is my take on Cars 3. So anyway, to anybody who is listening, what did you guys think of Cars 3? Did you like this movie? Did you not like this movie? Did you think this movie was okay? Did you think this movie is better than the first 2 Cars movie? I would love to hear your thoughts. And if I'm missing out on anything from this movie, and if I'm missing out on anything from the 3rd Cars movie, please comment below in the comment section. But anyway, that'll be a wrap on this episode. Thank you all for tuning into Codo Cinema. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. Remember to watch movies and stay positive.